this is a good illustration. And when we talk about that salmon come up and they find the river by smell, right? And so you can see the water coming out of the Baker system here. It's a completely different color than the water that's coming up from the upper drainages, right? And so as the salmon come up, they can smell where the Baker waters are, and that's when they take the turn there, right? Other salmon that spawn way up there say, no, this is not my tributary, I'm continuing up. And so they can find their original tributary by smell. And here, I mean, it's not always that dramatic that in terms of changes in color, but it's a good illustration that it smells differently, right? So there are fish coming back right now, okay? And at least that guy is hoping, right? So they have fish coming back right now, and that's why we're starting down here in the lower trap. They can't go very far up here, and then they get trapped and so forth, and that's what we're going to see. So is everybody sort of good with that kind of smelling and getting to the right destination? All right, so how big was it? This big?
Over that edge.
The other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about, and we should have a discussion about sustainability, because I asked that question on the Makar sheet. So we define sustainability as living in a manner that does not jeopardize the next generations and deny them opportunity to live in the same manner, right? So that was sort of the definition in a nutshell. So how do you then translate that definition into how you live? Do you think you live sustainable? Mimi? Okay, why not?
Because we always throw stuff away when we're done using it.
That's right. So we're throwing stuff away, right? We've got garbage cans. We buy stuff. And even if it's not broken, you can get a new iPhone, so I'm going to get a new one, right? So we're utilizing more resources than we should, right? So if you think about, so the more you recycle and the more you compost, for that matter, right? That would cut down on waste, right? So let's take a look at from the perspective of the Makar, how they lived. All of their resources, did they have any waste, in essence? No, they did not, right? Everything was reusable. Or it could go back in and be recycled in the environment, right? They lived in a wooden house, they had wooden boats, they were catching seals and whales, but all of that stuff got used, right? Nothing was discarded. All their tools were made out of bone or rocks, right? Hides or whatever it was, right? Wooden spears, fishing nets that were weaved out of sort of grassy species that you can continue to harvest, right? So if I buy a fishing net today, it's made out of plastic. So if it breaks and I throw it out in the environment, it's going to be sticking around for the next 50, 100 years, right? If the Makar threw out a net they couldn't use anymore, it would get decomposed and it'll grow back into the vegetation, right? So that's really where we all need to get to that point, right? So changing the way that we are sort of interacting with the environment. So one of the things I want you to do on Monday, and that's where you have a little bit of planning, and this is an exercise in sort of living a little bit more sustainable. I want you to, anything you do from the minute you wake up till you go to sleep at night, Monday, do not generate any waste. Okay, so that means anything that you do should either be compostable, recyclable. So if you want to drink some water, you take a cup that can be washed. Right? If you take a plastic bottle, make sure that it gets recycled and it is recyclable. Okay? That means candy wrappers are out. No candy because those wrappers is waste. Right? And obviously you want to go to the bathroom and that's fine, but that's actually that's actually composted. Right? By the time it gets to the sewage treatment plant. So that takes a little bit of planning. Right? So if you're going to make yourself a lunch and bring it, it's going to be in a container that can be washed. You can take home and you can wash it. So try that. It's a very, very interesting exercise. And it's a big eye-opener because every time you're going to do something that you normally do, you're going to have to say, oh, now I'm generating waste again. And so it's really a worthwhile exercise, right? It should be an eye-opener to how you are interacting. It's easy to say that to somebody else, you need to be more sustainable. But you really should start with yourself, right? In terms of, and in this case here, we're not even talking about transportation choices. We're just talking about waste, just one little element of sustainability, right? So when you sort of look at sustainable living, it needs to translate into transportation choices, how we modify or not modify vegetation, how we impact water quality, and all of those things that we do in life. Any questions on that? Is it a little clearer? Because that is an important sort of part. And a lot of you have identified when we were talking about the thing that you could change and the little project that we're working on in that PowerPoint presentation in the end, a lot of you pointed out air and water pollution, which has to do with production of all of this stuff that we're later going to throw away, and also transportation, right? So, but let's start with Monday, not generating any waste. And we'll talk about that briefly Tuesday morning. So.
For this river here, all these salmon are pretty much gonna die because there's no dam. There's a dam up there, right? So they can't go any higher than the dam past.
That's why we're here. So Doug Grulin is going to be our guide today, and we're going to go up and meet him up here. He's the fisheries manager for the Puget Sound Energy, and so he manages this whole project here with fish. And so please ask questions of him. So if there's something he's not mentioning, and Shauna and Sharon and Isaac, if there's something he's not mentioning that he mentioned last year, just ask the question. It's fine to. He obviously knows a lot since he actually established the fisheries program, and he's the one that's been running it for 20 years or something like that. I think as long as I've been here, he's been there.
So they just open it and the water, everything's changed.
So when all of a sudden you can see that line has changed, hasn't it? Now there's more flow now, so that means that they're probably started generating electricity at the upper dam. So when would they start generating electricity, do you think?
When people need it.
In the morning when we all get up. So about 6 o'clock, right? Everybody gets up. We turn on lights, we turn on the TV, turn on radios, do all sorts of things. Well, there's millions of people doing that. So then they crank it up. Well, it takes a while for the water to reach all the way down here, so that would have been about 3.5 hours. That's probably about right from the upper dam, right? And then in the evening when we all go to bed, then they start powering down a little bit. But it's more complicated than that, because that electricity goes out to the grid, and then there are windmills in eastern Washington that we're going to see next week. Well, they may, if it gets really windy, then it may be better to just rely on that and then shut this down, because then we got electricity for later because we are saving the water, right? But we also interact with what's going on in the Columbia River, because all of those dams is going to be in sync. And they're going to be in sync with this one, and they're going to be in sync with the 3 dams up. So it's really, really complicated. And I don't think anybody really appreciates it when we flick on the light, that it just comes on and, hey, it's there. But it's really complicated. But that's life. All right, I think we should get back up. And you can also see that this is called laminar flow. It takes a long time before the water actually mixes. So the two waters do not just mix up. There's a very sort of nice line, straight line there, right? It's not like it mixes up. It takes a while. It takes up to a mile before it actually totally mixes.
What's the difference between the two waters? I mean, as far as why they're so different?
There's different sediments in them, and there's different water quality in them. This water here has a much higher pH than that water up there.
Temperature too?
And very likely temperature.
Colder?
I would think so. Yep. By the time we get to the later in the summer, it may change because these reservoirs start to warm up. So late in the fall, this may actually start warming up a little bit more than this. But then again, you also got the other reservoirs up there warming up. Cool. Let's saddle up and